Hello, Dateables. Welcome to another episode of the Dateable Podcast. We are here to answer all of your questions about modern dating because we're also trying to answer those for ourselves. And that's why we do this podcast, so we can learn to be better daters. This week's episode is a little bit, I don't know, I like that we have this mix of experts and then we have real stories. We do have an expert on this time, but I like that this is all about positive intelligence, but his entire program is really centered around every aspect of life. And we have to remember that our dating life, our love life is connected to every aspect of our entire life.
Yeah, this episode, I mean, Yue could go into it more because you're actually in his program. So you came to me and you were like, I have the best guest and I'm taking his course all about positive intelligence. And I'm like, what the fuck is positive intelligence? And then you started to go into it of just how, we can, we learn how we sabotage our love lives. And as soon as you said that, I was like, we need to get him on the podcast. And I'm so glad we did because, like you said, we do this podcast. This podcast started because we were genuinely curious about modern dating. And we did not have it all figured out ourselves. And, now that both of us are not as active, we're not actively dating anymore, but we are navigating relationships. And fun fact, it doesn't stop after you got into a relationship. You never stop dating. And you just have new things pop up. And I think what I've been learning personally over the last I would say I'm hitting a year. I'm going on my year anniversary next week for going away. Yep. So we're hitting a year, and I'd say the first 6 months, you're in the honeymoon phase. Everything's great. Everything's going well. And not to say it's not going great now. It definitely is, but we're just going to a different level. We're hitting different things. And what I've learned from my relationship, talking to you, talking to other people in relationships and some friends that have been married for years, there's always something. There's always something you need to navigate. And it makes sense because you're bringing years and years of your own way of doing things and thinking about things and processing things to a relationship. And I love in this how we break it down and see how it's actually impacting our relationships with our loved ones and how we're getting in our own ways.
I was reminiscing about my previous relationships and even the current one, the first few months, because you and I always talk about the early stages of a relationship. And I don't think we ever went through that honeymoon phase because I think what it was my Yue bullshit phase. That's what I call it. That's what the honeymoon phase was for me. I threw out so much bullshit at this guy and every other person I've dated because I never thought being in a relationship meant it should be easy. So I made it very hard in the beginning. I would want to do the games and the chase and kind of make it not so easy for my partner. But then the next 6 months was about him breaking down my bullshit and being like, let's work on these issues instead of this me versus you mentality. So I look back on previous dating, the early stages of dating, and I just fucking cringed, Julie. I can't believe I was that person who would never say thank you at the end of a dinner if someone picked up the bill. I would just act like I was entitled for some reason because I wanted the guy to feel like he should feel lucky to be with me. What the hell was wrong with me? So yes, for me, honeymoon phase never existed because it's just Yue bullshit phase.
Well, I think we're, even if you're not in a relationship, this episode is equally as applicable because you can sabotage yourself even if you don't have someone to sabotage a relationship with. And that's exactly what you were doing. You finally just met someone that was willing to just break through it with you. It's interesting because I think mine was the opposite, that we were just so enamored and in love and, and then we started to be like, okay, this is the real selves. Not that we weren't showing real selves, but, you just start to dig in a little more and get more comfortable. And honestly, I think it's actually, even when there's conflict, I always think of our episode with Vienna Farron and Connor Beaton, which was last season, about how conflict is actually the key to a successful, healthy relationship. And I do believe actually it's broken down barriers that we can get to know ourselves better, each other better, and you build something that has a lot more depth than when it's just surface level.
Yeah, like what
and
Shirzad is going to go
honeymoonish.
into with this episode. We have two different sides of ourselves. We have the sage self, which is the compassionate, empathetic, peaceful side of us. And then we have the saboteur self, which is just multiple layers of sabotages. I don't even know if that's the right word, but saboteurs that can come and really ruin a good relationship. And in early dating, your sage side comes out because you want to be loving, compassionate, and empathetic. But the more you grow closer to each other, the more you can use your own saboteurs to bring out the saboteurs in other people. So you kind of like feed off of each other's negative energy. So it's inevitable in relationships that we have both sides, and that we can, they always say like someone can bring out the best in you and they can bring out the worst in you. That is so true in a relationship.
Yeah, or what you were saying is sometimes maybe your saboteurs come out before the sage. So I think everyone's different based on how you process relationships, your past experience, if you're protecting yourself and how you're doing it. It's a great topic, and it definitely gives me schemas
People
vibes.
love that one.
You know, like identifying how you fit in. There's a quiz you can take. Yue sent me the quiz. Immediately, I was like, oh my God, this explains everything. Similar to how I felt when I realized I was a perfectionist on schemas. And what I love about this and schemas is that there's nothing wrong with you. There's none that are better than the other. It's more just how can you get more knowledge about the way you process things, the beliefs you hold. So when it comes up, you're able to just be like, oh, yep, it's this. Not like there's something actually
I'm so glad you
with
brought
my
that up.
relationship.
Yeah, I'm so glad you
It's my
said
own
that,
shit.
because we always say that with personal development and self-help, sort of like these quizzes and assessments you can take. It's not to tell you what is wrong with you, not to diagnose you. It's to give you hope that you can work towards a better version of yourself. And we're constantly working on the better version of ourselves. So with this episode, with the schemas, with the personality test, it is just capturing you in this moment in time. And then it gives you a roadmap for where you can go towards. And that's always progress.
Yeah, it even reminds me of last week's episode, which got such great rave reviews about securing your anxious attachment style. We know that a lot of our listeners identify this way. It reminds me that it's similar to me, because you might never lose that aspect of yourself. Like you might always have some anxiety, for instance, or you might always have some perfectionism or whatever it may be, but you can learn how to control it, and you learn how to share it with someone, and you learn how to not let it get in your way ultimately. So I've been wanting to ask you this, Yue. So you you took this course with Shirzad, and one of the things I admire about you is your growth mindset, and that you're always looking for ways to continue personal development. What made you decide to do this course? Wow.
It's a very good question. I'm going to call out my good friend Eddie. Hi, Eddie. Thank you so much for thinking of me and my partner. So he was able to have access to this course through his company. And he was able to bring on some close friends to be part of his circle to go through the program together. And he asked me and my partner. And so we were like, let's do this as a group. That sounds like a lot of fun. But through the course of the last 6 weeks, what motivated me in the beginning was, one, I get to do this with close friends. So we get to keep each other accountable, but also to show compassion for each other as we work through these issues. And then the second motivator was in an introductory video. Shirzad says, how many times have you gone through like a motivational speaking event or gone through a program and you're like, I'm going to change my life and this is going to be so much better. And then you forget about it a month later, right? Because he's saying that a lot of personal change comes from, it's a habit change. So it has to be a habit and behavioral, sort of like a daily exercise for it to last. So the way he programs this is that every day you do exercises. So you can keep this in your repertoire for the long term. So those are like the two main motivators for me.
How is doing it with your partner?
Yeah.
Because I've been greatly debating doing this with my partner.
I would highly fucking recommend it, Julie. And this for anybody. You don't have to, it doesn't even have to be this program. Go through any program together with a partner, because I feel like it gives you a common language with your partner. You know, like you do these PQ exercises as part of this program. So my partner and I will, like, on a daily basis be like, did you PQ today? How many times did you PQ today? Right? And it gives you like
that makes it fun too.
It's like an inside joke, right? And then I also think it's a fun thing to do because you can be more vulnerable through it's a very structured program. So instead of like you figuring out all the things you want to bring up yourself, the program actually elicits that out of you. So it's kind of like group therapy in a way.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's not just you educating your partner.
Right.
Because I think a lot of us, I mean, Yue and I included, obviously we host this podcast, but all the people that listen to this podcast, I sometimes think that everyone has a leg up in dating because you're, taking the time to actually, understand dating, not just do. And taking that step back to reflect. But I love this part of not just educating, not that that's a bad thing, but it does make it more collaborative that you can do it together.
Yeah, that's a key word, collaborative. And I also think that if you find a partner who's willing to go through any of these programs with you, that's already a big step forward.
Oh my God, this was such a vetting requirement for me. I remember when I was dating, this time around when I met my partner, because, I'm like, fuck it, I'm not hiding aspects of myself. It's really important to me that someone wants to grow. Like, personal development is a core of who I am, and I want someone that's on the same page. And I would bring up the schemas quiz and all that stuff. And some people just were like, what the fuck? Like, what is wrong with you? And then my partner today, like, he took the quiz and on his own came back and like told me what his answers were. And I was like, okay, he's on the same page. So I think sometimes we want to hide the best aspects of ourselves, but it can be a way to really filter and find that match that's on the same page.
What I love about this is that that when you're in a relationship, your partner today is not going to be the same partner next month or next year, because they're constantly changing. So this is a great way to grow together, right? So like you can be on the same path and have that common language to grow together. And I really love that. And for anybody who's been through therapy or these like really kind of intense programs, when you ask them what they're looking for in a partner, they always say, I look for a growth mindset, right? You always hear that. I just want someone who's been through it, who's still going through it, and who wants to keep going through it. And this is a great way to like find other people who are in that kind of same class of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, the person you are today is not who you will be tomorrow, and that's a good thing.
Can't wait to meet her.
Love it. Well, we're gonna stop there because we got a whole episode that's really diving into it. We made the announcement last week. We'll be shortening these intros slightly because we have bonus content coming every Sunday. We're calling it Brunch Talk, so you can listen. It's gonna be released around 10 a.m. PST. I'm like, what is the equation? 1 p.m. EST.
1, yes.
So, I think people on the East Coast tend to eat later brunches, so it works out. The idea is you can fuel your brunch talk for real life.
Julie,
too.
when have you ever eaten brunch at 10 a.m.? Let's be honest here.
Oh, never. I'm more, even though I'm on the West Coast, I'm like, I probably actually fall into the 1
But
p.m.
brunch
boat.
is supposed to be breakfast and lunch. It literally is supposed to be between 10 and 11, and I always have brunch after 12.
So it's perfect. You listen to this short episode. They're going to be 20 to 30 minutes long. You're ready to go for your brunch that you can just dissect it even further with your friends. And what we're trying to do too is there's some things that are worth discussing over brunch, and there's some things that aren't, like analyzing text messages or profiles. We think that's a gigantic waste of time. But the topics that we're going to be talking about are worth analyzing over brunch. So
yeah, they're juicy.
Anyways, yes, tune in. And while we're talking about being collaborative with potential dates, friends, whoever, share this episode with a friend because you know, we all need this. We all need this revelation of how we might be sabotaging ourselves. And also, like I mentioned, share this with your next date and see how receptive they are to doing the work and taking the quizzes and learning about themselves. Because learning is sexy. So find that out.
Yeah, I think it's a great date question or a friend question to ask, what are you currently working on? What's something you're working on about yourself? And then send them this episode. Done.